Okay, there's nothing like a good belly laugh right before you go live, Lisa. I was watching the chat that happened before we went live today, and Lisa says, I'm keeping 20 baby goats, selling down more adults. I've named one Nicole. Oh, goats. I love goats. Anyway, welcome to our homestead update today. We're going to be doing what we usually do, right? Which is go through everything that's up on the homestead. I'm hopefully going to be able to monitor Odyssey. We're going to go into that now, and we might get a little bit of sound for a second echo. Going to be monitoring comments on Odyssey as best I can. Of course, I see the YouTube comments better because it integrates better with StreamYard, but I'll take your questions. We had an interesting rousting discussion about raising rabbits on grass yesterday, and now we are back at it. If you hear a little bit of sawing in the ground, I use people names. She's really feisty and independent. Yep, I can be really feisty sometimes. Sometimes I'm just tired, though. Anyway, if you want to get a question in, try to put it in all caps. I try to see things, but when I see at least the first couple words in all caps, then I know, hey, you're trying to give us sort of your input. Oh, also, I wanted to show you all my shirt. This is my shirt. Give me liberty, or I'll take it myself. Thank you from John Willis at Special Operations Equipment. I love this shirt. It's a great shirt, and it's helpful because I've got a bit of an attitude today. We're in full-on spring workshop prep mode. If you hear saws in the background, that's because Tactical's sawing on something. I don't know what. He hasn't sawed on that part of my house for weeks, but right now on the live stream, he's right there with his saw, which is fine. You may hear that in the background. Anyway, get your questions in all caps. Today, we have a homestead update for April 22nd, 2022, and I'm going to be discussing raising rabbits on grass. The forage that's popping up all over the place, and the forage that's retiring for a while, and what's happening with our gardens, stuff like that on the homestead. The whole purpose of this, y'all, is so you can really experience what we're facing on the homestead on a regular basis. And I've been at this for 15 years, and every year is different. I'm 15 years in, every year is different. And this time of year, we get a little bit sleepy. Good morning, JP, over on Odyssey. I also wanted to mention I'll be speaking at the Exit and Build Land Summit in Bastrop, Texas. So if you're going to be at that, reach out to me. Let me know. I'll be there. We can talk, right? I'll be speaking on developing your underground network and connections leading to entrepreneurship and your networks of businesses that you work with. I'm going to be talking about how to put some of that together and why that's important right now. I will also do a second session with Jack Spirko on Sunday where we talk about using entrepreneurship to acquire your land for people who are looking to acquire land. That's in Bastrop, Texas, Exit and Build Land Summit, May 12 through 15 in Bastrop, Texas, which is kind of near Austin. Kind of. I mean, it's closer to Austin than I am right now anyway. If you want to just see that digitally, though, guys, you can watch it for free if you go and sign up because he'll be streaming much of what's going on there. So you might want, you can pay to go and see all the cool people, or you can not pay to go and digitally go and see all the cool people. So it just depends on what your reality of your situation is. It's like we have so many events we do in our network. You can't go to all of them, right? But go to the ones you want to go to, meet some people. And, sometimes it's fun to drop in digitally. Also, if you want to email feedback on this or things you'd like to hear about from the homestead, you can do that by emailing me directly. I see my emails, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, NICOLE@livingfreeintennessee.com, or go over to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on contact, and those come to me directly. With that, I'm going to jump into our first Friday update where we talk about the forage. This is the part where the picture in my head of what I'm doing is I go out and I have a little basket and I wander through the land and I pick things and it's fun, right? What really happens is I'm like, crap, it's almost dinner time. What are we going to eat? And I run out to the yard and I pick stuff real fast and that's what's for dinner. And at this time of year, it's a fun time of year because there's a lot that's available in the yard, and it's just going to grow now into the fall until it dies back, and then we're digging under the ground to find the stuff in the winter. So here's what we got going on right now. I talked a lot about early spring greens last week, especially going into Easter. I always seem to be able to get a salad that has dead nettle, that has watercress, that has wild mustard flower, stuff like that. And sometimes if I'm lucky, some hairy vetch comes up and get the little purple flowers. And it happened this year. It was like the stars aligned and all of the lettuces came together for Easter for the Easter salad that I did not make. We did have watercress, but I didn't go driving around for the wild mustard because that does not grow on my land. One day it may. I haven't gotten it to take here. I've transplanted it a few times and scattered seeds around, and it just hasn't happened. Here's how that works, though, guys. If you're kind of taking that permaculture approach and you're looking for diversity of what goes on in your land, and you have wild spaces, you just sprinkle seeds from the wild there, and eventually something takes off and other things don't. And one day the climate will be just right for wild mustard. Right now, where I never had stinging nettle before, I have stinging nettle, although Tactical mowed it. He mowed my nettle patch. So I told him, like, maybe we should just put a border around that in the future if it comes back right there, because I like stinging nettle. The big stinging nettle patch is a fairly long hike from here, and then I go pick it and I bring it down. So having stinging nettle close by would be nice because I use it in tea. This is actually coffee I'm holding, but I use it in tea. I use it in soups. I love stinging nettle. And that is right at its peak harvest right now. The other greens, though, are dying back. So the dead nettle is over the hump. We'll have some here to show people at the spring workshop when we do just the wild forage walk that we're doing. You'll get to see stinging nettle. Chickweed is dying back. Everything's dying back. But here's what's coming on. We've got lettuce and radishes coming on in the garden. When things get long in the tooth for forage, it's usually not the best time to eat them. So we're probably not going to eat them. And then we also have pea shoots coming up. I usually have peas that are further along, and I'm looking out my window as I talk about this because I took a bunch of really old pea seeds and put them in a line along my rock wall, and I have one plant up. So I have pea shoot. Just pea shoot. That's it. And then I've put a second round of peas in just for the fun of it because it's a rock wall. They can flow over it and it'll look cool for, another month, and then they'll die back because it'll be too hot. And right at that spot on the rock wall, we get a decent amount of water from the drain off. So it's actually not a bad place for peas. Next year, I'll get them in sooner. We just didn't have the rock wall in time for me to put peas there when I usually plant peas. So really all I'm growing with the peas is the shoots. I don't expect to get actual peas because in Tennessee, when you plant them this late, you get the greens, but then the sun comes out, the heat comes out, the temperature goes up, and the peas say, screw you, we're out until fall. That's just what happens to me here with my peas. I mean, they'll go about another month maybe. And for me, that means pea shoots. But pea shoots are great. You just I didn't know if you know this, but you can eat the greens of peas. They taste kind of like peas, but they're great on a salad. We've also got plantain at Ideal Harvest for small early spring leaves, which are great in a salad. If you let them get long, they're chewy. And then the other thing that's happening with my plantain is I already have seed heads. So because we ripped out all of the stuff above my house and we're reseeding up there, my goal is to get variety up there. So we have annual rye up to create shade so clover will germinate and fescue and other stuff. And I'm going to be throwing plantain seeds up there too because plantain is a great plant and it does really well here. Comfrey is up. It's about 3 inches tall here. Comfrey is a good medicinal, especially if you get bee stings. And I ended up having an incident this weekend. So my buddy, my bee mentor, came out, and I haven't been working the bees since I had the allergic reaction last year and had to go to the hospital. But my mom loves working bees. In fact, she worked in a bee apiary in college, which is kind of cool. And she went out and she helped Ken, and she got the crap stung out of her hands because she put her gloves on, right? Gloves on her hands, and didn't notice little holes in the fabric. And she went out with holy gloves. And then the bees were like, they instantly noticed because they wanted to sting her, that there were holes in her gloves, and they stung her through that. So she got a couple stings on her hands, on her arm. She came in the house, and I was like, oh, I saw a comfrey plan. Wait right here. Like, because once my bees get mad at you, they know who you are, and they target you, and they won't target me. So I went out, I got comfrey. She's like, no, it's okay. I'll be fine. I'm like, no, seriously, like, squish it up, put it on there. We like taped it to her after kind of muddling it so the juices were coming out. And then she put different gloves that didn't have holes on them over her hands and went back out. I duct taped her sleeves so they wouldn't get up in there. And she went back out and helped with the rest of the bees. And if you understand bees, like, other people's bees aren't like my bees. My bees are bitchy bees. And when you get in their hive, they get stingy. And it is what it is. That's why we wanted Ken to work them before the spring workshop so we don't have swarms during the workshop, although we've never had a workshop where there wasn't at least one swarm to catch, but we'll see how that goes. And I wanted them to be in a state where they weren't feeling super protective because people will be walking around, and I don't really want a bunch of bee stings. Also, we don't put the workshop right in front of the beehive. So she finished working with the bees. It took them about 2 hours. I had 2 hives. They got split into 5 hives. There are 4 hives here. One went off with Ken to go back to his land. And she came back in and she was like, I am now a convert to comfrey, because all of her evidence of bee stings were gone just from taking a leaf that grows. So it's kind of interesting how the timing works for that, right? Comfrey's coming up. It's time to work the bees. Comfrey helps with bee stings. It's time to work the bees. It's almost as if nature has a plan, right? It's almost as if it evolved to work that way. So that's all that's happening off the land right now. And yes, Carrie, tactical mode, the stinging nettle patch you were going to show people on the wild edible walk. That's okay. I got another one. I've got a smaller patch I can show you, though, when you get here. Just remind me when you get here because I will forget. Okay. Next segment is livestock. This is where we talk about what's up with our livestock on the homestead. We haven't had a lot change since yesterday, right? We just have the same old for spring. The pigs have been becoming interested in each other, which means Lady Pig is not pregnant. And at some point, she probably will. And they're working on that. But I haven't seen evidence that they have successfully worked on that. And this is a funny thing about livestock on the homestead. Suddenly you find yourself observing, like, is he closing the deal? I never thought I'd have to ask that question so many times. Usually it's none of anybody's business, but it's actually kind of my business with the rabbits and with the pigs right now because we want them to reproduce. The pig plan as it stands, because y'all know I was planning to sell Lady and the stud. I'm still planning to probably sell Lady and the stud. If you come here for the spring workshop, you will smell why, because I don't have appropriate rotation. However, we have a pond next door that could use some working. And so we're going to move the pigs right after the workshop. We're moving the pigs down there to work that area up. And then we will go from there. But if you do not rotate your pigs, you smell your pigs unless you get deep litter in. And then if you cannot source product for deep litter, then you smell your pigs. And I don't like that. And I don't like them having to live like that. So we've brought in hay and some other stuff, but it's just been, it's not great. I mean, they're well treated, but you will see what happens if you have pigs and not enough space for pigs when you get here next week. We are getting ready for baby chicks, and they arrive in a week. So we'll have 40 here, and of those, 37 will survive to adulthood, and then they will be processed into meat chickens, well, into the freezer camp. Looking forward to that. And the reason we did the timing that way is that a lot of people start earlier in the spring. I don't like to do that because you're fighting the cold the whole time and you need to keep them warm. And my goal with baby meat birds is to get them on pasture as soon as possible. So we're just getting to where it'll warm up. I can put the chicken tractor close to a power source and put a heating lamp out there and keep them warm for a couple of weeks. Like, we'll start in a brooder for a week or two, and then they go out on grass as fast as we can get them. And listen, they will eat grass almost immediately. Like, at first you get them and you teach them to eat and drink. And once one does it, the other ones do it. And then within like 3 days of them being here, if you put chickweed in there, which is called chickweed, probably because chicks like to eat it, they'll eat the crap out of that. They love it. So bringing them greens really helps get their intestines going, and it's nutritional. And some people say you should never feed them anything but a balanced, like baby chick feed. Wrong, 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 wrong. Feed them plants. They will absolutely love it. And so that's happening. We did it now. Usually I would have them coming like last week or this week so that they're not, because the other thing is we're doing the kind that take 8 to 10 weeks, which are not my favorite variety, but it's the variety I'm set up to do right now. So that's the variety we're doing. And so usually I'd start a little earlier so it's not so hot when we process them, because it's way easier if it's a little bit cold outside. But the spring workshop is next week, and I didn't want to be like managing baby chicks while managing 70 people on my land, right? So they're coming like Tuesday after the workshop is when they get here. And then our long-term plan, as I've said, is to get a heritage breed that takes a little bit longer to grow out, that we can have a small chicken flock that's contained, because I don't like chickens running around my property scratching up everything I just put in. I have 2 that do that right now. They've been around a long time. They get to die of old age here. That's their goal. Well, that's my goal for them. They still give me eggs, and we're like 5 years in, those guys. They don't give them to me every day, but I still get chicken eggs, little green chicken eggs from these guys. And when they pass, there will not be free range birds, chickens here. The free range ducks are fine. They're way less destructive, and that's okay. But for me, because I don't have everything fenced off all over the place that I want to get access to for growing food, I don't like the chickens getting up on my hillside garden and scratching out all the wood chips I have there as mulch on purpose to keep things I don't want from growing and to support the things I do want growing, right? Anyway, so that's why we're doing it then. A really good time I've found to raise meat birds, though, like ideal, is August. They come in mid to late August. It's hot outside here. It is so hot outside here during the day, no heat lamp required. Sometimes at night, you want to take the edge off a little bit. You put one heat lamp in a tractor outside, and they are fine as long as you keep them dry. And then by the time you get into September and it's cooling down, they're feathering out, and you end up processing them in October. It works great. And if you have the longer 12-week birds, you end up processing them in November. And it works out great, because then you don't have to go through the winter trying to feed these things when you're not growing food for them in your property. So I really like the August timeline, but I also don't like stacking up everything in the fall events wise. So we're doing the chickens, and then we will have a chicken processing workshop in late June for anybody who wants to learn how to process a chicken and go home with your bird. And then we'll have chickens for our freezer for the year, and it is what it is, right? We like doing that. We like doing that cycle. By the fall, though, I do hope to get my hands on heritage breeds that I can mate with each other to keep the meat, sort of a small ongoing set of meat birds happening that are raised by their parents, right? Yeah. And Lisa says, exactly, chickens scratch really bad. Yeah. They like to, I mean, you can use that, by the way. It's great. If you have mulch you need to spread somewhere, you just throw it out there and throw some scratch corn in there and let the chicken, and they'll scratch it and spread it all out for you. That's what they will do. They'll scratch through piles of compost and pull out all the insects. It's tasty, tasty, tasty for a chicken. We're adding muscovies, and I see Lisa Davis is here. Lisa, hi, Lisa. We're getting muscovies for her also after the spring workshop. It's like BW and AW, before workshop and after workshop. So livestock things are happening after the workshop so that we don't have to have new livestock here when there's also people singing karaoke, which is a little unusual for the animals are like, what? They get over it, but they're like, what? And brand new animals would be a little more freaked out by that than ones that are secure in their living. And you don't want like an unfortunate incident where all the sheep get out in the middle of your workshop and they're like all over the place. Nobody would want that. When I first got goats, they got out and I was running through the woods to find them. And I luckily I found them all, but they just didn't know where to go. So they just went running up the hill into the woods where all the coyotes are. Got to be careful about how you put that livestock on. And then I wanted to do an update on last week's discussion about raising rabbits on grass, because I was talking about rabbits is a good source because they can live on grass. And then John over on Odyssey, I'm looking over on Odyssey. Hello, Philippine Nomad. And he said you can't do that, and that they're really expensive to raise. Now, we haven't found them to be expensive to raise, but I had to go dig into that because I know several people raising them on grass only. So I talked to John Willis and I said, I don't know if you're raising on grass only, but I know you're tractoring them. So are you raising them on grass only? He said, no, he gives them about a quarter cup of rabbit feed per rabbit in his tractors, and then they forage on the ground. And then I circle back because Daniel Salatin, Joel Salatin's son, has bred his rabbits so they survive on grass only. And I asked about that. And what I found out is he has successfully bred by selecting who lives well on grass for grass only. And by grass only, guys, I don't mean grass only. And I think that's where some of the confusion has come. I mean pasture, which means there's fescue and clover and different, it's a variety of different things growing, right? It's not just grass, like lawn. And what he has discovered, though, is as he selects, he has maybe, I think it's 2 to 4 years of that works really well. And then he starts getting rabbits that are being born with birth defects because of the inbreeding. And then he needs to bring other rabbits in, and then he needs to retrain them for grass. So to John's point, it's not super, it's not set it and forget it necessarily. You have to be purposeful about it, but you can move your rabbits to go mostly towards grass, and you can even get them to 100% pasture, but the genetics may not support it. So then I was like, well, how does Nick Ferguson do it? And I realized that he raises fodder trees. And so when you talk about raising animals on the pasture, he's also supplementing with silage and fodder that he's growing on his land. So it is possible. It takes work, and I don't mean grass only. So that's sort of that's what I found out about rabbits, and we are working to tractor our rabbits as much as possible. So that's the deal. I've got a question here that's not in all caps, Carrie. Thoughts on trapping and breeding wild rabbits? They're already adapted to forage. If you want to trap and try it. I have tried to help baby rabbits that were wild live, and they died. So I don't know, if you think about how a rabbit lives in the wild, it lives in a tunnel. You can give it a go and see if it goes. That's that's how we got domesticated rabbits. So it depends on how much you want to do. So have you thought of growing Timothy hay? I don't know if it's possible yet. I haven't. I'm growing wheat right now. Wheat results in grain, which results in feed. That's where we're at. Lisa says the geese prefer to exclusively graze in season. Their poop is green. I'm selling down to a few goslings. She also mentioned that the Muscovies can live on forage. That's part of why we're adding Muscovies. My khaki Campbells mostly live on forage. They hardly eat anything. They eat more in the winter when we overwinter them. And yeah, I got a sorry from Carrie. You don't have to be sorry. It was just funny. We've basically tried to move things that are more suited to forage. Muscovies are known for that. Anyway, Shmata says trapping and breeding wild rabbits is illegal if you care about that. So Carrie, decide if you care about that. Wild rabbits don't have nearly as much meat as large meat breeding rabbits, right? And that's where the rub is, right? When you're raising things for homestead consumption, part of what's happened is they've been selected for ideal use on a homestead, and that means that supplemental feed is helping them get bigger. The other thing, when we realized, though, which breeds are most resilient on the homestead on the talk with Billy Bond last week, is it tends to be the smaller meat rabbits are more resilient. The smaller sheep are more resilient. The smaller pigs. And so we started noticing this trend where, from a homestead scale where you're smaller, all of the smaller animals tend to be more resilient, need fewer external inputs, and are better to manage. it's just not profitable. Or if all you're doing is I'm making money on these, it's not necessarily profitable to have a pig that takes 2 years or to grow out, right? And so that's where on the homestead it may make sense if it grows slower and you can have a lot more forage and a lot more scraps raising your pig. But it may not be ready in 6 months. My pigs were ready in 6 months. So Mike Leonito says, what's best for yields from industry are almost never best for homestead economy and quality of life. And that's where you just have to make that decision and learn about it. And then you do stupid things like bring pigs on your property. They're too big for your property. And you should have totally raised AGHs, except for you don't want that much fat. So you raised the IPP and she got giant and, it needs more land than I have, right? That is what it is. Anyway, that is the update on the livestock. And I wanted to circle back on the rabbit thing because, sometimes I'm working on stuff and I talk about it and I haven't finished the process of doing it. So I don't know some of the challenges. And I want to make sure when I say some BS that I go back and I update what I've learned about that, because otherwise you're going to be out there trying to do it. So is possible with rabbits, is not easy. And you could buy from Daniel Salatin genetics that are already suited to grass, or you could develop your own. It just depends on how you want to do that. And, most animals I raise get a vitamin supplement of some sort now and again. Like my chickens do, the goats do, the rabbits do, the sheep are going to, the pigs don't. The pigs don't. They haven't needed one. So they would if they needed one. I mean, my plants do. I give my plants magnesium. Don't tell anybody. Speaking of plants, our next segment is grow. This is where we talk about what we're growing on the homestead. I totally just spilled my coffee on my desk. Good thing there was no electronics there. We've had not a lot of germination outside. And I'm frowning about that. I think it's just because of the weather, though. It's going to warm up. It's perfect for germination and then cold. And so I think that's what's going on. The other thing it could be is my seed's not that great. I put a lot of old seed out. So I'm like, whatever germinates. But I also have some new seeds. And those seeds, we'll see. Because I just put them out about a week ago. It's frozen twice since then. There we go. Check out the book Beyond the Pellet by Boyd Craven. Cheap but amazing resource on moving your rabbits off feed. There you go. If you're going to move them off feed, don't just throw them on grass and expect them not to die. It is what it is. So I'm just keeping the beds watered this week. So we've had a really good cycle of rain and sun, and that's great because then I don't have to water. But we've got 5 days of sun right now, and the land is used to rain and sun. And what I find out happens at this time of year when we get that 5 days of sun, if you're germinating, you need to water once a day because it kind of dries out on the surface. And that's close to where the seeds are. So we'll be doing that. The potatoes that we planted are poking up through the wood chips that are around them. The garlic looks fantabulous. The garlic patch is always good here. And we added hops to the plan this year. Why did you add hops if you don't make beer, Nicole? Well, it makes good hops tea. Hops tea is an interesting, if you haven't had it, you should totally try it. But Taj Mahaler has a clear roof. And right now it's warmer under Taj Mahaler than other places. Right now, that's not really a problem. When it gets to like Tennessee summer hot though, I'm totally going to want some shade there, and hops vines grow about 20 feet. So when Carrie asked me if I wanted any hops rhizomes, I was like, why, yes, I do, Carrie. And so what I have are pots at the bottom of the posts, and then I'm going to train them up and train them under Taj Mahaler because they like the heat and I like the shade. So that's part of my shade strategy for the year. I'll let you know how it goes. I always have a shade strategy for the south side of my house. That is this year's experiment. Last year it was tomatoes. The tomatoes did a great job. We are also adding tomatoes. But I have more area to shade, and it can't be all tomatoes. It just won't work. The sweet potato slips are up. This is fun. Jenny had a box of sweet potatoes in her basement for like 2 years. and they're still like able to give us slips. So I got a whole bunch of sweet potato slips. And if you're growing for calories, sweet potatoes are a great thing in Tennessee. If you're growing for calories, potatoes are a great thing north of us. But sweet potatoes are great for me as a ketogenic eater because the greens. They'll vine out with all sorts of greens, and those are fabulous in saute in midsummer. So I'm looking forward to my sweet potato greens coming on. The tomato system's on the to-do list, so we'll be getting that set up, hopefully partially by the spring workshop, which is in a week. It's in a week. We got to get that thing put together quick. Anyway, we like to show you how that works because that has been part of my solution for strengthening my tomatoes against the blight. We're also trying to add aspirin to the water we're growing them in, as well as the soil that they will be placed in, and see if that works. That's just something we heard about on the Survival Podcast. Don't know if it works, so we're testing that out. Lettuce and brassicas are super happy this year. Usually I have a slug problem and I don't know, like the cabbage bugs come and all of the broccoli gets eaten. So far that hasn't happened. We will see. I've handpicked a few slugs off, like mini slugs for my aquaponic system, but other than that, we're looking good. And perhaps this year will be the year I get some broccoli in the spring. Usually I have better luck getting broccoli in the fall. And of course, the fertility schedule is launched. So we're doing foliar feeds and other things on a weekly basis here just to keep the plants happy. I've been using Garrett juice. I'll be adding magnesium and calcium and iron and stuff like that. And then we'll be doing the warm crop seeds shortly after the spring workshop. What I mean by that is so I put squash seeds straight in the ground, and green beans and cucumbers and stuff like that. They're all going in the ground. They like the soil to be above 60 degrees, maybe 65 degrees before they're going to germinate. We just haven't had that yet endure for very long. And if I had squash up right now, it would be really sad next week when it gets down to 39 again, right? Hopefully that 39-degree day is for realsies the last day that we are at risk of frost around here. It has been hanging on this year, guys. So those are going in, and that means the garden will stop looking like rows of nothing and will start looking like rows of something growing shortly thereafter. Right now, it's just like, well, looks like rolls of mulch, Nicole. Is what it is. You know, most of the upper garden is going to be squashes and cucumbers and peppers and tomatoes and some other companion plants that are in here as seedlings that get to go out there right after the spring workshop. Maybe during the spring workshop, if we get a wild hair, we'll see what we do. I'm very careful about outsourcing transplanting of my plants because I want it done very carefully. I'm a weirdo that way. So that's what's going on with the grow situation. Next segment is Holler Neighbors and Community. We're all just focused on the workshop. Nighthawk came by yesterday with 12 chickens that I'm cooking for the workshop. And he said, "Hey, Nicole, the workshop's next week." And I said, "Yeah?" He's like, "I thought we had another week. I'm going to go mow my lawn now." And he left, and I heard the mower going until almost dark last night. So we end up having people camp over there, and he thought he had another week. So that was a surprise for him. That was a big surprise for him. And then Jenny just said, "Hey, are you having lettuce at the workshop on the menu?" I was like, "Yeah." She said, "How about some radish sprouts?" I was like, "Sure." So she's making radish sprouts for the workshop and doing a bunch of stuff at base camp where the classes are. That's what our community looks like right now. It's kind of like everybody's working all the time and we're tired. And we kind of snap at each other from time to time about stuff because we get grumpy at night. Next segment is infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we're building on the homestead to handle all the homestead things. We are just about ready for sheep, Dawn. Yes, that's right. We're almost ready for sheep. Almost. I'm pretty sure if we heard sheep were coming, that within 2 days we'd be ready for sheep. And what that means is that we have an enclosed area almost ready to be like the final stretch pulled. We have thought about shelter, and we've thought about giving them vitamins and all of the other things. And we're just ready to get that done right after the workshop. It's like this is the episode where I talk about after the workshop. Good morning, Practical Gadgeter. The red rocks are going to be painted today and put outside. So I'm going to go get gravel. I'm going to get red paint and a paintbrush. I'm going to paint rocks red. You know why I'm doing that? It's a chicken training system. I'm going to train my chickens that when you see a beautiful red thing on the ground near the strawberry patch, that it's just a rock. This is an annual training that is required that I did not do last year. As a result, last year, the chickens discovered that the beautiful red things in the strawberry patch are strawberries. So that's the trick, right? Once a year, shortly before strawberries come, you put your red rocks out that are strawberry sized. The chickens will peck at them and go, well, that sucks. And then they will learn that the red things right there are not interesting. So it's red rock season. And I'm saying that now in case it's red rock season for you and you have free range birds because you're stupid. And then the anti-duck and chicken defense systems are going up. So we put short little fences up that, the chickens can fly over it, and sometimes they do, but they usually don't because they're lazy. And then the ducks, my runner ducks won't go over it. So they'll just run into it and go like, oh, I want what's on the other side of that, but forget it. And they go off and they get bugs somewhere else. Those systems are being put in. Like I've had 2 chickens taking dust baths in my potted plants out front. And so it's sort of halfway done out there. I put about 18-inch on those. I'll put 18-inch slats and it works just fine. So that's what's going on with infrastructure. Nothing crazy. The last segment is finances, and I got nothing to report because I'm not selling anything right now. Like literally all we're doing is getting ready for the spring workshop. So that is the homestead update for Friday, April 22nd. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Thank you for joining in. Deborah says, I never thought about chickens seeing color. I didn't either until Nick Ferguson told me that trick. And I was like, Nick, you just like saved my strawberry patch because I'm tired of chickens getting in there. And they like, once they find the strawberries, man, it's like ducks finding water, right? You're not keeping them out. They're like, the good stuff is in there. I will get in there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoy the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it 2 ways. Get your coffee at hollerroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. Just head over to livingfreeintennessee.com and sign up. And then just a couple of event reminders. 1, Exit and Build is in May. That's coming fast. The price goes up, I think, after today. So go to exitandbuild.com. Grab your tickets if you're going to be there in person. Definitely sign up if you're interested in seeing that live streamed because the live stream is free. And Self-Reliance Festival is coming fast too. That's June 11th and 12th in Camden, Tennessee. That's all over at selfreliancefestival.com. Hey guys, thanks for joining in and make it a great week. There will not be one of these next week because of the spring workshop, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. Make it a great week.